Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another webinar brought to you by CargoNOW in collaboration with the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport Singapore. My name is Joe Lombard, and I'll be co-hosting this webinar with you. My colleague Bob Gill, the General Manager for Southeast Asia for the advisory, the ARC Advisory Group, is also co-hosting this webinar with us. The subject of our webinar today is food chain security. What is the 30 by 30 and its impact on the supply chain resilience? And to discuss this topic, we have two very eminent speakers today. Mr. Chu Bin, the Director of known as SAFER. Mr. Chu has been in the industry for many years and has some very interesting insights to share with us later on. Our other guest speaker is Mr. Jackie Goh. He's the CEO of AgDirect Singapore Pty Limited, a premium meat manufacturer, distributor and retailer based in Singapore. Gentlemen, welcome to our webinar. Right, so let me start off with the first questions to our guests. Mr. Chu, maybe you can share with us a little bit about your background, experience, and briefly some of the significant achievements of your career so far.
Okay, I'm a kampong boy. I grew up in the livestock chicken farm stayed there for 27 years. So after that, I further studied in Australia as a qualified engineer. So my career is, first part of my career is 25 years in the engineering and construction industry and engaged in a lot of major projects in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, also Cambodia. So during that period, I also a council member for Singapore Contractor Association and also Singapore Granite Supplier Association, and involved in many public building projects such as Ngee City, Republic Plaza, also housing board contracts, MRT station, as well as those projects in China and Indonesia. From year 2010 to 2018, actually, I back to Chu's Group as executive chairman of the Chu's Group Limited. Chu's Group, I think everybody know about. They are specialized in production or range of healthy and nutrition, genetic and designer eggs under the brand name called Chu. The group also one of the leading supplier of granite. Okay. Yeah, liquid egg, and produce about 500,000 eggs per day.
Wow.
And we also produce our chicken soup, liquid egg. So we also supply the eggs to McDonald's in Singapore, export egg to Hong Kong using the cold chain method.
Right.
Yes.
And that's when you started to develop and form SAFER? Is that after that's your experience in the Chu Enterprises?
Yes, yes. So we really we feel that as federation is important to represent the three segments of the farmers, the vegetable farmers, livestock, and also food fish, so that we can team together and share the knowledge, share the experience, also engage the government to go into this important segment.
Excellent. We will ask you more questions about that information experience. Thank you, Mr. Chu. Mr. Goh, a little bit about yourself, your achievements to date, your career exposure, and where you are today.
Okay, unlike Mr. Chu, I miss the kampong stage of Singapore. You know, I was born right into the, HDB estate. So currently I run the meat processing and distribution company, AgDirect, as you have introduced earlier. We are a premium beef and pork supply company, mainly from Japan. Of course, we do a bit of US and UK as well. This is a SME. We have about 40 staff. Mainly, we do B2B business, serving 5-star hotel, Michelin star restaurants, which are mostly closed during COVID.
Okay.
We also have an online store, meatlovers.com.sg.
Okay.
And we happen to carry the largest range of Wagyu beef in the region, actually. So, A Direct actually was the first company to introduce Kobe beef in Singapore.
Okay.
And now I think we are also very happy that I think sometime this week we'll be the first company to introduce Japanese chicken in Singapore.
Right.
So this is something pretty interesting for us. Before A Direct, I'm in actually with a agri-tech company. So it's kind of still in agriculture, but it's quite a different zone.
Okay. Thank you,
Right.
Mr. Goh. I can see you brought the appetizer with you behind you. Are making us now very hungry with the appetizer behind your backdrop there. So let's get started then. Let me ask Mr. Chu again, what does food supply chain resilience and security mean in the Singapore context? And how does this differ or similar to other ASEAN neighbors?
First, I should lay out the challenge of the food supplies in Singapore. Because Singapore import more than 90% of its food from about 170 countries and regions. So the four main challenges. First thing is the disease situation, like COVID-19 pandemic, then logistic, shipment down, country lockdown. Another challenge is climate change. This means rising temperature, rising sea level, and also the one is a geopolitical problem because of food shortage.
Right.
Above reason. The fourth one is a local space constraint, water constraint, manpower, human resources. So to ensure and secure all these food safety problems, actually Singapore government, SFA, adopt the three main strategy. First thing is a diversification of import sources, grow local produce, which is the most important thing, grow overseas. Grow means the local farmer go to overseas and grow the food and send it back to us. Other two things I feel that is important is R&D on the new food technology, actually like new nutrient source, alternative protein, plant-based meat.
Right.
Yes. And
so, Mr. Chu, sorry for interrupting. So no one else is doing this. So, for example, Singapore is the only country in ASEAN doing the diversification, sending our farmers to other countries to grow and bring back in. Are we unique in this? Is this the special programs that we're driving?
Yes.
Okay.
This is very diversified. 170 countries.
Right. Okay. Great. So Mr. Chu, where in this new strategy of diversification, increasing the penetration in terms of going overseas to grow and bring back home the produce, where are the vulnerabilities? Because this creates new vulnerabilities in the supply chain, right? So how do you see the mitigation to the new risks that are created by creating a different plan?
Obviously, just how I mentioned, the four challenges to the food supplies. First one is the disease. Being COVID-19, the whole thing will lock down.
Sure.
Maybe a country will ban the food and the logistic down. So this one is also, that will be the main problem.
Right.
And in future, the climate change is, you cannot avoid. So raising temperature means you have to use a very sophisticated equipment to protect the vegetable. Then the land for agriculture will be reduced. So this one will create another geopolitical problem.
Sure. And the funding for this, Mr. Chu, where is it coming from? Is it funded by private enterprise, or is it a government subsidy for this? How does it work?
Okay, Singapore is always, we have to study is it viable. So it's always in the private investment.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Mr. Goh, from your side, obviously you're an importer and you have very similar vulnerabilities, similar risks. What are your vulnerabilities and risks as an importer? And are they similar to what Mr. Chu has said, or do you have a different set of challenges that you've got to deal with?
Actually, I think Mr. Chu has covered most of the area which I think, it's that's kind of challenges that we are facing. But just for us, I think, I just want to highlight one area which it's, like the space, and cold store, the cold chain. I think this is something which I think is going to be particularly challenging for importer like us. We just realized during this COVID that, a lot of the cold store in Singapore is full because people are stocking up, a supplier is stocking up, and full because people cannot sell, right? So these are kind of, a very interesting scenario that we didn't realize that it would happen. Yeah.
Right. But clearly, if you are going to increase local produce, if we are going to have more local storage because of vulnerabilities, we need more infrastructure, and cold chain, cold store is going to be part of the normal situation. What are the investment programs in place to actually mitigate this shortage of capacity?
Well, I think the government will have to, look into this area very seriously, because currently I think, this infrastructure, that it's a kind of, it will be difficult for private company or individuals or businesses to want to look into this area, because the scarcity of space in Singapore, it will be quite high cost to drive this area unless, they are certain there is kind of, enough of support, in terms of, the supply.
But clearly the government can help and enable, but private industry needs to facilitate, needs to create the business case, has to actually show the approach going forward. Isn't there a lot of also outsourcing cold store and warehousing, and a lot of logistics service providers are providing some of the facilities? Is that still not enough?
I think it's a chicken and egg thing, so whether you grow the store and then you wait for things to come, or, there's a lot of things, and then, eventually there's a big demand and, not enough infrastructure to support. So I guess, you're right, the industry has to balance it up. But with this 30 by 30 vision, I think, maybe the government can be a little bit more aggressive and, maybe pace forward a little bit to make sure there's enough room for, for this thing to grow, Okay,
very interesting points.
So coming on to SG 3030, now this is something that we've been hearing about much more this year in 2020. And there's still been many people who are not too familiar about what SG 3030 is. So, Mr. Chu, perhaps you could shed some light on this for our participants this morning. Yeah. What is SG 3030?
Yeah, sure. So, Singapore Food Agency, SFA, has set the targets for producing 30% of the Singapore nutrition need by 2030. So to improve the food security. So this mainly on this egg production, then the food fish, and also vegetable. So currently the food, fish, and vegetable only less than 10%, but the egg production is about close to 30%. Wow. It's 1.65 million per day.
Okay. So what's driving this initiative? Why do we need 30% production by 2030 in Singapore? Why is this so important? Okay,
just now I explained the challenge. There's a 4 challenge I just mentioned before. So food diversification, and also climate change, also geopolitical, and also local produce. But from this COVID-19 pandemics, we realize all other factors can be distracted, can be stopped, and temporarily disrupt the supply chain. So only thing you can help you is the local producer. Local produce actually is eco-friendly and less is a shorter logistic chain. Right. So it can continue produce the local produce to supply at least 30% to the local consumption.
Okay, so that's what and that's why. But in terms of how, we've got 10 years to go, and how are we going to achieve this in Singapore? What kind of steps are taking place? to get to this goal of 30/30?
Very challenging. So, but in order to speed up this one, actually the government is launching an express grant to jumpstart the industry into accelerated mode. It means this is going to speed up, and extra grant will pump into this industry. So SFA also identified four areas they can do. First thing is, of course, getting the consumer to support the local produce. Because this is important. If the consumer, the local food manufacturer, F&B, hotel, supporting the local produce, then the farmer can increase the production, using the new technology to produce more, and this one, so that where you will encourage the farmer to produce more. But on our hand, SFA and SAFER, we are working very closely to promote the local produce by through we call it farmer market. And last time we used to, before the pandemic, actually we used to organize a lot of local farmer market in different areas, so to create awareness. We also create e-market, work together with the logistic people, so that they can buy the local produce from the e-platform. Then we also come up with the introduction, the stamp for the local produce, so that they to promote the local produce. Second areas, we have to using the technology to grow more with less. That means greenhouse, high-tech, automation, sensor, robotic, using water and energy efficiency, some like solar power, biogas, gasification power, automation to come in. Third one is unlock the physical space of farming. That means now they are using the rooftop or housing board, then grow the vegetable inside the factory. This one also is ongoing. The fourth one is developing the local talents. We need people to go and grow, need the R&D, need the research to create the new technology, new way to grow the vegetable. They are concentrate on this four way to do it.
Right.
Okay, so you said it's very challenging, but do you feel it's achievable with all these programs going on?
Okay, for livestock, definitely it's not problem. If in 2 years' time we may produce up to 2 million, 2.3, 2.5 million eggs per day, which is around 40%. For food fish, there's some other farm actually is building up the egg storage factory, so that we can use the RAS system, reverse circulation system, so that using the high-tech system to grow the fish. Vegetable, they are building the very tall type of greenhouse, so that the productivity can go up, and many urban farming is coming in, so that they can work together in community, so that they can supply directly to community. So hopefully all this one add up will achieve the 30/30, but it's very challenging.
Okay, thank you.
Very impressive, Mr. Goh. Thank you for that explanation. In fact, we hadn't realized what a lot of things are going on. For sure, as consumers, we will support local produce. We hope it will be a little bit more competitive as well, so that we can actually benefit from the better pricing. But great, and we maybe come back to some of these technological advances later on. But if I can turn to Mr. Goh now, clearly during the COVID-19 situation, we were all very fortunate that there were no food shortages in Singapore, even though some people were panic buying and emptying shelves. It clearly shows that Singapore's diversified supply chain network seems to have held up very well. So as a practitioner, as the guy in the front line doing the importation, how was this achieved, and how is it proved that the food security system in Singapore actually is quite robust?
Okay, as you are aware, I mean, just now Mr. Chu has also mentioned, Singapore is very well connected to the world, both air and sea, you know, and we have access to almost all the traditional food supply base. So Singapore, as was earlier mentioned, we source from as many as 170 countries. So it's really, you know, like all over the world, right? You know, and well, and more importantly, of course, during this COVID, as you can see, why that despite this, you know, these disruptions, we continue to have this basic food supply, because I think, you know, while doing, you know, I mean, Singapore suppliers are very efficient. You know, we want to do a lot of, I mean, we do JIT, you know, just in time.
Right.
But at the same time, being Singaporean or Singapore supplier, we also has this kiasu, you know, mentality built in us. So while doing JIT, I guess a lot of people just slip in the JIC just in case. So you do the just in time and then a bit of just in case. So I think this JIC actually help us, you know, have that buffer, you know, during this period of time. That you know, fortunately, we don't have that shock, you know.
Yeah. I don't think it's only Singaporeans that JIC. I think most of us, most human beings actually have that kiasu approach anyway. But having experienced a very good, sorry?
In terms of food.
Yes, in terms of food, yeah. So Mr. Goh, do you think that this robustness and resilience can be sustained in the future going forward, looking at the disruption supply chain, looking at disruption at other countries, farming, etc.? Have we done anything to make sure that we can continue this robustness going forward?
I think, you know, when we look at this, just now, I think Mr. Chu mentioned about this 30-30, the goal and things like that. One has to understand that I think Singapore didn't start from zero, right? You know, I think at this point, the self-sufficiency, it's like maybe, you know, for egg, we already, like what he mentioned, we're already pretty okay. Fish, we are probably about 10%, vegetable, you know, I think 13-14% was mentioned. So we don't really start at zero. Right, so this short-term disruption, I think we're still okay. But I doubt, you know, I think we are healthy, but we're not resilient enough. So I don't think the current state cannot sustain a prolonged disruption at this point.
Yeah. Apart from 30-30, which is a very impressive program, you as an importer, you said we are now importing between 160 and 170 countries. You think this is going to increase to maybe to 200 countries or reduce because clearly the numbers is important to get the variety and diversification, but also creates risk. In your view as an importer, would you increase or decrease or rationalize?
I mean, I hope that, you know, we are able to get our supply from more sources, of course, you know, but looking at, I mean, Singapore, I think, you know, we are confined, restricted by all this geopolitical problem. And I think going forward, you know, the number may decrease rather than increase. Right. Despite the fact that I think our intention is probably to be even more diversified. But I think, you know, it's getting a lot more challenging nowadays for the fact that because of political situation and also for climate and in all these conditions. So, you know, the supply actually, you know, in some region or some area, they have not enough for themselves.
Okay, great. Okay, so the other concern on security is not just only the pipeline of deliveries, but also there can be other concerns. For example, is food contamination one of the areas that concerns us? And what examples do we have where we got to put preventive actions to ensure that we don't have contaminated food? For example, let's take Mr. Chu, from the local view, how would you see that? Then I'll ask the same question to Mr. Goh on the imported side. So contamination clearly is one of the issues that is of great concern, I believe, to all of us.
I just have to mention about some practice in the local farm. Okay. They say the livestock, actually we practice for ISO 22000. So this is a combination on quality management, also food safety management. So to make sure all the food out of the local farm is safe and also traceable. This is very critical. So we test the raw material for the feed. We test the chicken. We test the egg. We test the maintain the temperature on our farm go out. We also very concentrate on the biosecurity. Make sure no virus will go into our farm. So this is critical. So we believe this is to solve the contamination problem.
Right. And I'm sure based on what you told us earlier on about the technology you're using, also technology is quite relevant to the contamination tracking and tracing testing of your produce, correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And are you stepping this up now? Are you increasing the amount due to the COVID risks, etc.?
Okay. For your information, actually, all the livestock farm, all the time we are presumed that the bird flu going to attack us. So
right.
we actually put up all the biosecurity. It's the same as the COVID-19. You understand? So
yeah.
instead of influence the chicken, now it's attack the human. So,
right.
but the practice is the same thing.
Right.
So
right.
actually we already very in place the system. We constantly supply, take the sample for testing. It's testing by the third party, by SFA. So we got that. We also traceable like egg. We actually put up the code word on every egg, so that make sure that it's traceable. Any problem, you go back for us to refer to the test result.
Impressive, very good. And you call this biosecurity. Is this a new
yes.
Very good. Mr. Goh, from your perspective, clearly the importation side is not easy to control. If you're producing Singapore, you've got regulation, you've got the ISO, you've got compliance, very stringently managed. As an importer, clearly there are different standards, 170 countries may approach it differently. How do you cope with this issue of contamination and traceability and assurance that we have got a safe food supply?
Actually, if you look at Singapore standard, we are rather high as compared to maybe in other country in the region. Right. So Singapore, regulators actually need to certify even their overseas farms before they're able to bring in the produce. Products from those areas. For us, in the case of beef, right? Those slaughterhouse needs to be certified. Right, so you have certified slaughterhouse, and then to make sure that they comply to our standard, they know exactly what to do. And in terms of technology, I think now there's a lot of track and trace technology from farm to table, so consumer can safely monitor the progress of this product until when they are receiving it. So well, I guess that is how the technology is coming in, intervened in this entire supply chain.
Very clear. It looks very structured and very. Who provides the certification of overseas producers, farmers, slaughterhouses? Is it a government initiative or is it a private association that provides this mechanism? The
certifications is, I think, the slaughterhouse needs to be certified, kind of on the SFA, selected list, before they are able to be approved for import into Singapore. So I guess in Singapore context, it's the government certification.
Okay, excellent. Excellent points, because you really address many of our concerns of what is happening. Of course, there's always more we can do. But certainly there's a lot already happening, and it's very reassuring to see what's going on. At this point, Bob, I would like to bring any questions from the audience. Do we have some questions that we'd like to promote and ask our esteemed panelists?
One interesting question is about, we all know that Singapore likes to benchmark itself against other countries. And so in this situation of these initiatives like 3030, is Singapore in a unique position here, or are there other countries that we can look to as a model in terms of how that can help us get to where we want to go to, or is it something that no one else is doing?
Okay, of course, our surrounding country in this region, actually they have a big space. They are food exporter, so they no need to use 3030 to speed up, because 30 by 30 actually we take very short term to step up the production, which I don't think other countries need to do that.
Okay, but there are small nation countries around the world, because there's Monaco, there's also Switzerland, there's Malta, there's a lot of small countries similar to Singapore. I presume they haven't got the models that you are talking about. So in effect, we are the first, right? Singapore is pioneering this model.
It's very unique.
Unique, yeah. And obviously it's very challenging because it's unique and there's no model to follow.
Okay, we do have a question. This is specifically for Mr. Chu, asking, do you export to Hong Kong? And if that's the case, will there be enough supply locally in Singapore?
Okay, you know, local produce always have the slightly higher price compared with the imported food, because we have to comply more to the regulation issues. Then manpower is more expensive. So at normal time, actually, the farm have to find a way to survive, because we cannot compete on the price.
Right.
Yep. So we happen to do the survey and find out actually Hong Kong consumer, they like small egg, and Singapore consumer don't like the small egg. So that suit us well. We export the smaller egg to Hong Kong in a better price, and that's how it happened this way.
Okay, I think Bob, we're running a bit of time, so
yeah, sure.
I will press on now. So really what I'd like to ask, and Mr. Chu, you've touched on this, I would like to talk about the standards, sustainability and eco-friendly practices that are evolving and now accelerating due to the COVID pandemic. You mentioned earlier on, I believe, the ISO 22000, which is something that is really very, and I had never heard of this before, but clearly it's an important ISO. Tell us about what are the benefits and what are the good practices that we can expect that this will bring moving us forward.
ISO 22000 is a food safety standard developed by ISO, this
Right.
International Organization for the Standardization. So
Right.
this is the food safety management system. It combines the ISO 9001, is a quality management.
Right. Okay.
Also together with HACCP. It's a HACCP, I think a lot of people know about the hazard analysis and critical control point. So to combine, to make sure we have the consistent quality. That means you produce one egg and produce 500,000 eggs, same quality.
Right, right.
HACCP will make sure you are safe to eat.
Right, as a guideline. Okay, Mr. Goh, from your point of view, from an importer again, how many of your importers are compliant to a standard, whether it be to ISO 22000 or a similar standard? Is this something that concerns you? Is it going to be? Is it a level playing field that where the local producers are compelled to, not compelled, are invited to actually apply for the ISO standard, and whilst your importers, you may not be able to apply it. How does it work in practice?
Actually, this standards, as you mentioned, it's voluntary, but you actually add credential to manufacturing like us. So having an ISO 22000 certified just put more confidence and credential to your company and your products. So people like us, we like this kind of standard, right? But of course, and sometimes your customer demand that you have that kind of standard before they even buy from you, especially the more established one, right? So the bigger one, usually they would want to trade or rather deal with people that meet a certain standard, right? And of course, all these testing and documentation, it takes time, it costs money. So this will eventually be passed out to the consumer, right? And testing takes time. So, and if there is a delay and things like that, it shortens the shelf life of the product, because it's shorter shelf life. So again, this is, additional cost to supplier to us.
Right. So Mr. Goh, earlier on we talked about certification of overseas farmers and slaughterhouses. What standard are they using then? Are they using something similar to the ISO 22000, or is it a different standard that we accept as a compliance standard?
Yeah, it's usually the HACCP standard. International standards are quite common. I mean, just now what we mentioned, this ISO 22000 is not developed by Singapore, it's an international standard. So something common that people understood. And we go around, we see a lot of, these slaughterhouses, they, usually they like to comply to this kind of standard. So that people recognize in all regions.
No, I think we are all very conscious now about food quality and food content. And so therefore, knowing that there's a certification process in place and maybe there's a higher cost for the benefit, then maybe the consumer will accept it. Which leads me to the last question that I would like to ask you is, how do we encourage buyers to consume local produce? You know, most of you have traveled and you have seen in the past, you know, buy New Zealand beef, buy British, buy this, buy that. I've never seen a Singapore advert about buying Singapore. Mr. Chu, is there going to be a campaign buy local? How do we going to encourage because I've never seen something. Maybe I go to the wrong shops.
Okay, safer, the Federation actually work very closely with SFA. So
Right.
We actually organize a lot of, we call it a farmer market. So
Okay.
for the last few years, before the COVID-19, actually we have a lot farmer together. Let's say 25 or 30 of them. So they will sell their local produce, also their local food production, so that to encourage an awareness to Singapore produce. So
Right.
we also developed the e-market so that you can go to the e-market to buy our local produce. Another
Okay.
thing is we also work out the stamp. It's unique Singapore stamp, so that in future, very soon in future, all the local produce can use this stamp, so that you can recognize this is a local produce.
Okay, but you know, if I go to cold storage or NTUC, I don't see any promotion about local produce, do I? It's not obvious. I don't. No.
Yes, it's not so obvious.
Not so obvious. Yeah.
Should
we do something more? Should we do something more to promote this? If we want to grow the industry or grow or accelerate the 30-30 program, shouldn't we do more promotion of that?
That is absolutely right. So that we are talking to the SFA, because this one we need a lot of fun to do it. Need money to advertise, social media, all this one coming. So we really need a support from the.
I think I would like to add on, you know, besides the branding and marketing, I think, you know, it's probably we would seriously look into investing in the R&D to improve the quality, both cost and taste of the local produce, so that it's going to be as good, if not better, than the import. Otherwise, you know, as a consumer, you know, regardless of whether local produce or not, how much you ask them to buy, because even if it's cheap but it doesn't taste good, people will still avoid it.
That's a very good point, Mr. Goh. I really appreciate that. But you know, promoting local produce can just be posters as well. You don't have to go to the full hog. You can't have to go, you know, social media, but you can start simple and move forward. But your point is very interesting. Okay, time is really running very short, and there's a lot more things we can discuss here. Bob, do you have any other questions from the audience you want to bring in? I've seen a couple of points.
Yeah, we do have a question here from someone at NTU, and he's asking again about 30-30. Why is it 30% and not 20%? Is it because it sounds nice, 30 by 30, or why can't we do 20%? Perhaps 20% is more realistic, Mr. Chu. Why is it 30%?
20 years passed.
I don't know why I come up with this figure, but
okay.
I always believe I believe that 30% is a good reserve figure, so that in case of is a disruption of the food supply, we can distribute the food, so we still can survive.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So
good.
Be ambitious. Yes.
Okay. Bob, any other questions from the audience?
Yeah, maybe take one more. Probably this is more directed towards Jackie about meat-based products. Does the Singapore government control importation via audit and certification?
Meat-based product. I mean, as far as beef is concerned, yeah. I mean, we every import needs to be, you know, kind of checked. So we have to pass the SFA inspection. They take sampling, and then if there's no problem, then they release it for sale. So you know, if that's what they're asking for.
Okay.
Okay, that's the question.
Great stuff, gentlemen. Thank you so much
for your
comments.
Sorry, Joe, can we just take one more? I think this is quite a good one. The last question.
Sure, go ahead.
Is it possible? Again, I think this is from Mr. Chu. Is it possible to be 100% self-sufficient for egg production? Can we go 100%? Is that possible?
For egg production, there's no problem, but the price will be a lot different. So everything is possible, but the consumer must have a choice, and the price difference can be down there.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Gentlemen, it's been a very interesting discussion. I'd like to leave the webinar with some takeaways. If I can start with Mr. Goh, what are your takeaways from this project of food sustainability and more independence? What is your takeaway statement?
I guess, this COVID is actually a very good lesson for us. I believe that no amount of planning can actually, is enough to cater for panic buying, right? So, I would like to address on the defensive strategy part, is to maybe constantly, kind of educate the public, have a trusted communication channel to share information. I imagine that this is like, during a national day, countries like to show off their weapons, to show off their weapons to demonstrate their defense capability. And maybe we can do that for food as well, to do the same, showcase your stockpile, your food supply, and how much you have, so that the public can have a confidence, hey, actually there's a lot out there, we don't have to rush, so maybe, that in that case, we can, avoid this kind of panic buying with short-term disruption.
Excellent. So basically, the COVID has taught us a lot of lessons, showcase what we can do, just like we showcase our military hardware. Yeah, excellent. Mr. Chu, the last word is to you. What would you like to leave us with your takeaway words?
Through this COVID-19 pandemic, actually, the critical trick is more critical on to support the local produce, increase. This is because that's the only way they have a shorter logistic chain, so not easy to break down. Then we also enjoy the safe food, and so this is the most important.
Okay, so critical to support local producers to reduce the supply chain time, the risks, and have the availability onshore. Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your insights. You are extremely knowledgeable on this very important subject. We have a lot more to talk about, but time has run out. But thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you, Bob, for sharing the questions from the audience. And thanks to all the audience who have connected. And I hope it's been enlightening, as it has been enlightening for us, to hear what is going on. And really, the final message is support the local producer. This is what will bring us closer to the 30-30 goal. Yep. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Take care and stay well. All the best.